This car is an STC. You also have the STC. I'll show you what's the difference on the master cylinder. So this being an STC, you notice there's only two connections, this one and this line right there. If you have a DSTC, the master cylinder is completely different. It has the two connections like that and also have two connections underneath. So for DSTC cars, I'm not sure how this works to remove it from there or to bleed it, but for STC cars, I will just show the procedure to remove it from there. So right now what I'm going to do, I would strongly advise get in advance, 1 or 2 weeks in advance, spray some penetrating oil on all bolts. The bolt that it's securing to the booster, there's one there, there's another one there at the bottom, and also especially on these connections, if you have the two on the bottom as well on those two, spray 1 or 2 weeks in advance penetrating oil, because these things are oftentimes very stuck in there. So as I said, I'm replacing the master cylinder. I will have to remove this bar. I'll undo this bolt, the bolt on the other side, and then I'll do the middle bolt in the right on the engine mount here. These bolts are a bit tricky. It's 18mm, but you need to keep it from rotating with a ratchet, with a wrench just underneath. Place it. There's enough space. Careful when removing this bolt. You may want to keep the nut from dropping in there and losing it. Next step would be the nuts on the lines. So again, I'm not sure about the DSTC ones that are underneath, but these are 30mm. However, I can tell you that these are really stuck in there by corrosion. So I did not have much luck with the 30mm wrench because it slips. You see there's a bit of clay, and it's very easy to round this part. It's very easy to round this nut because I think it's not steel, it's something else. So it's pretty soft. So I had better luck with this adjustable wrench. It's a little bit easier, although the place is tight. But the best will be to get a flare wrench. So it's a wrench that's a little bit closed here. That's the best. So again, don't forget to spray penetrating oil on it. And once these guys are removed, you will lose a little bit of fluid. Try to place a can underneath or just a plastic to catch it, or at least at the very end, don't forget to spray with some hose. Clean very nicely underneath because it's dropping on the CD joint and all the rest, so you don't want that inside the car. It will also smell, so make it really wash away at the very end of the job. Or if you want to catch it, just put a can underneath something. Actually leaked the whole reservoir in there, so just try to catch it with some plastic like this. This is sour cream, to keep it just underneath those two lines, to catch everything so you don't spill it on the ground. And then there's the rear attachment points to the booster, and for that one, that's really tricky on the right side. You may want to try a wrench. It's also 30mm. The wrench fits very tight in there, and you don't have much place to rotate it. You see there's this wiring, electric cables, so there's really not much play to move it. What I used actually, I use a wobble like this with a 30mm socket. So if you want, it's much better to try this. I'm not sure if you can do it without it. It's a 3/8 wobble socket with a 30mm, and this one fits with an extension, fits pretty nicely in there. See, this is how I'm getting to that bolt, to the brake booster with extension and the ratchet. Also, don't forget to undo this the clip on the sensor, and I think, yes, yeah, just tossing on the side. It's also a good idea on these bolts at the moment when you spray some penetrating oil sometime in advance, just get a wire stainless steel brush and just try to clean the threads before you undo the nut, because the nut will go much easier out this way. So usually this is what I do. Usually I will just use some wire brush or something like this just to clean everything here before I try to remove the nut, because there's a lot of gunk and rust on the threads and the nut will be hard to unscrew from there. By the way, careful with the ratchet. Ratchet goes right near the negative pole, so better disconnect the battery at the trunk before doing this, so you don't touch these wires with the ratchet. Again, this nut was very hard to untwist from there, really hard to turn because it's all rusted in there. So if you want to use a wrench, 30mm, it's gonna be a really long job, and careful not to drop it. So it's pretty rusted, so I'll go on the other side now. And sure enough, I dropped the nut underneath inside the engine, but hopefully I just had a spare one, so keep in mind, keep your hand on it, don't let it go. Time to remove it from there. Don't forget maybe to wear some blue gloves. There's a bit of tubes, lines here, kind of in the way, but it should be coming out fairly easily. Just toast the lines so they don't grab the disconnected ones, and then so it's off the studs from the booster now at this point. It's a bit tight. Alright, it passes a little bit tight. There's two lines to the ABS module right there, so just pass it over those two lines. You may bend them a little bit, not too much, and they should be free to move. And there's a cable in there, a cable to the sensor. Watch out so don't grab on it. And then there's the road, connecting rod to the booster. Also, you try to move it in a straight line so you don't bend that rod. Should be a problem, but just to be sure, the rod goes in there. So again, just free it from the studs on the booster, move it forward a little bit, and then just pass it over these lines. You may want just to push a little bit downwards, but it will just pass over these lines. However, on the STC cars, there's more lines underneath. I'm not sure how it goes on those things. The very first thing I'd like to do is just put a wire brush like this and clean nicely those two studs, because they are really with rust and the nut is really hard to turn. And then it's just time to swap back the new brake booster and to bleed it. I would also recommend to clean everything here very nicely with a paper towel, something very clean, so you don't grab any particle of dust. So just make sure you're gonna seal properly when you tighten it back. When you install the replacement unit, make sure the rod from the brake booster goes straight into the center of that small section of tube into the master cylinder. I had a bit of trouble starting this nut on the master cylinder because the line was bent a little bit, was sitting sideways. So just make sure the line goes really perpendicular, not on the side, and that's how you really go start that nut. And the same here. So sometimes the line were just a little bit bent, so make sure they are really in the center. Keep them with one hand and turn the nut with the other hand. By the way, if you need to replace this sensor for some reason, it's on the brake booster. It's called a diaphragm position sensor. It has a cell clip like this which ends on the side, so just grab something sharp, insert it right there, and just lift this clip, toss it on the side, and then I think you need to twist it a little bit. That's coming out very easily when this clip is out. So with the master cylinder in place, you may want to tighten a little bit the nuts. Again, very careful with these nuts when you remove them. They are really soft material, so try not to use a wrench, it's gonna slip on it. So anyhow, just tighten down until it stops. Don't need to put the torque on it, just until it stops, like this, just like that, on both sides. Fill it up. The fluid, it's specific, it needs to be DOT4, but there's two types of DOT4, and you need to have the one for European cars. Absolutely no other choice. So with the nuts tighten up, you just fill up the reservoir, then go inside the car. And at this moment we are going to bleed the lines. There's air inside the lines, there's also air inside the master cylinder. It's what's called the bench bleeding. So we need to remove the air both from the lines and from the master cylinder. So we want to try this first before replacing the master cylinder. So with the nuts tight, we're going to start the car. There's no need to turn on the engine, just depress the brake pedal fully to the end, keep it there, and I'm going to keep it in there with something very handy. So you want the pedal to stay, maybe don't push it to the floor, just push it maybe 2 inches before it reaches the floor. It's better not to push it fully to the floor, give it some space. Maybe you want to put a wood a 2x4 underneath. The pedal should never reach to the floor because it's going to move into the side of the brake cylinder, master cylinder, especially the used ones, where it may wear the seals. So put this in place. Notice I put something to catch the fluid. The fluid may leak underneath, so sometimes it's hard to see it. So just pay attention closely, and you may want to undo a little bit the nut, just a little bit. And we need to try this several times. Hopefully the camera zoom, please. Alright, good. So I did undo the nut. I see no fluid coming out, so it means there's still air in the line. Of course, this is the first try, so tighten back just like it was before, just like that. Then go for the other side, undo it a little bit, just maybe 90 degrees turns, just a slightly bit, and see if there's fluid coming out, or otherwise it's still air in there. So I'm not going to film this, and you need to go back now. I'm going to release the pedal. And then going to depress it again. So this should be repeated as long as you see you don't see air coming out. Sorry. So pedal was depressed again. I'm going to go. I cannot do it because I have one hand, but I'm going to undo again the line, both of them, see if there's fluid coming out. As soon as you see you have a little bit, that was air coming out. So as soon as you see fluid coming out on one side, just make sure there's a good stream of fluid coming out, right? You tighten back and tighten securely this time. Just give it a little bit of torque, don't need to be too much. And then also check for the second one. As soon as the fluid comes out full of stream, tighten back and you are pretty much done. So again, maybe one line is gonna be a bleed first, and then you have to repeat the procedure for the second one. Depends, doesn't matter which one. So make sure both lines pour full fluid out of them. If you have STC, make sure, I guess, the underneath lines also do the same. Again, make sure you close the nuts before releasing the pedal. Well, The lower nut took me at least 10 pedal pumping, so 10 times repeating this procedure for the lower one. The upper one went much faster, so I'm about at the 10th pedal pumping. Let's try again. You may still have fluid coming out, but also air, so if you hear like a hissing or bubbling, there's still air in there. So I'm going to keep, although it's leaking, but I'm going to keep pumping the pedal. And by the way, as long as there's air inside the master cylinder, the pedal will be very easy to depress. The engine is off. So if you feel the pedal is very easy to depress, it means there's still air in there. When the air is going to be completely removed, the pedal would be very hard to depress. By the way, while there, because you are depressing the pedal, and keep it there, make sure your car battery, the main battery of the car, is in good condition, because the lights of the brakes will drain a little bit the battery. I'm not sure if you can try this with the engine on. Maybe take a chance, but it's just a risk. So I just depressed the pedal again, and it was very it was going to the floor a little bit easy, but at the end it was very firm, which makes me think there's not much air left in the system. So from this point, you see there's already pretty much, you notice the bubble, there was still a bubble in there, air bubble. So I will keep going from this point, at least 5 more pedal pumping on both knots, not just the lower one, just to make sure there's no rush. You just make sure there's no air bubbles at all. You notice the air bubbles? Yeah, so keep going on both of them at each pedal depress. So this one was looking like it was completely warped. It was always fluid coming out until now. I did remove it again and there's still air coming out. So you got the idea. Just make sure at each pedal depressing, each pedal pumping, you check them at the very least. Check both of them at the very last try, very last pedal pumping. So I'm at the last check now. Pressing the pedal, it feels really stiff, hard to depress from the top, very short travel, and at this point there should be no more air in there. I'll just try to fix this. Keep it there. I'll just go on the lower one, but do the same on the upper one, and you should be seeing a very continuous stream of flow there, just like that. I rather just tighten it right away so there's no air getting there. So let me just check the other one. Again, the pressing, it's pretty firm there. There's not much flow in there. Oh yes, it is. You see it underneath. So this is what I would like to see actually, and hopefully that's at this point the thing is completely burnt on both sides. Obviously check the level. You should not go below the minimum level. Keep it up, top it up, so you don't have to do the whole job again. And let me just go for a driving test. Oh yes, I forgot to say, no, I'll put this in the beginning of the video. So that's it. Go for a drive test. Just go in a safe place, not in the traffic. Check your brakes at that point. When you finish the bleeding, tighten securely these nuts. So go first, just tighten just like that until it stops, and then give it just a little bit of more angle until it feels snug. And that's it. It's not much more than that. It doesn't need to be really torque with a wrench to be secure. That's all. Don't force on it. Now it's the end of the video and just need to put everything back in place. I like just to share my own opinion on why these master cylinders fail on these cars. Notice that this is an automatic transmission, so I don't have a manual transmission with a clutch slave cylinder. So the reason why I believe this fail, it's when mechanics, you go to a garage, you ask the mechanic to install a new brake pad. New brake pad means thicker material. Thicker material means the mechanic needs to push back the caliper piston. And many of them, what they do is just they force back the piston without releasing the bleeder. And that causes back pressure inside the master cylinder. Now I know very well from forums, many people say they did push back the caliper piston without releasing the bleeder. They have never had any trouble. Yes, but probably you will do this 10 times, and then the 11th time you'll have a problem with the master cylinder. So by all means, try to release the bleeder when you put new pads which are thicker, to make place for new pads. I know the front bleeders are easier to remove. The rear ones are usually very stuck in there. You don't need to force them. You notice how much I forced on this to tighten. Don't force too much on those bleeders to tighten them. But if they are stuck, just ask for help on forums how to remove them from there. And always, if they are stuck, replace right away with a new one. Buy only from Volvo. There's no aftermarket ones. So again, always try to remove the bleeder when you install new brake pads. And good luck with this job. It's not a hard job. By the way, use only Volvo parts. I'm not sure who's doing this one. ATE perhaps. So use only Volvo from Volvo, or a used one from Volvo if you want to take a chance. If you're looking for a used one, they have a dead stamp here in the circle. It's 2 digits, the last 2 digits of the years. And also there's a stamping that you may need a mirror to look underneath this body, metal body. Again, do not use aftermarket parts, they are terrible. And also you cannot refurbish this one. The way it's done, it has a circlip that doesn't have ears, so you cannot remove the circlip at the end to remove the whole stuff inside. So you cannot refurbish them. Go either used one or original one from Volvo, or maybe if you can find ATA from online stores.